About 8 months ago, I created a video called How to Make $1,000 a Month Selling Low-Content Books Using BookBolt. Now, the reason that I originally decided to make that video was because they have one of the best Amazon research tools when it comes to low-content books. And as I said in that video, research is 50% of the game when it comes to low-content book publishing. And another thing that I liked about BookBolt was that they had a software program called the BookBolt Designer, which allowed you to lay out and assemble your low-content books as well. Now, as far as the overall usability of the software, it was good, but they weren't going to win any awards with it. I mean, using the BookBolt software to create your books was kind of like using an abacus to calculate your taxes. It could get the job done, but it wasn't very efficient. Well, that's all changed. For the past 18 months, the team at BookBolt has been listening to our griping and complaining, and they went and fixed pretty much everything that was wrong with the software. So in this video, I'm going to take you on a tour of the brand new BookBolt studio. Hey guys, Craig here. Hope everybody's doing well. Okay, so as I walk you through all of the upgrades that BookBolt has made to their book publishing software, I'm also going to take you on a little walk down memory lane every now and then, just to give you a quick little refresher as to what it was like using the old BookBolt Designer. Now, before I jump in, I just want to preface this review by saying that everything that I taught you in my last BookBolt video can still be done in the new BookBolt Studio. It's just a lot easier to do now. And if you haven't watched that video yet, then be sure and watch it next. There are a lot of great book design tips as well as instructions on how to use the BookBolt research tools in that video, so be sure and check it out. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. And if after watching this video you decide that you want to give BookBolt a try, just know that if you use the link that I've placed in the description section of this video, along with my promo code Babin, you can save 20% off the subscription price. Alright, let's get into it. Remember when you used to log into the BookBolt Designer and you'd have to choose between making a book cover or a book interior? No more. You can now set up your entire book all at once. Or you can still work on them individually. And what's more, you have the option to create hardcover books as well. Now, everything else in the setup menu is pretty much still the same, with the exception of the fact that you can now name your project here as well. Do you remember the old book cover template that looked kind of similar to KDP's cover template? Well, this one is identical to it. It even includes the barcode so that you don't accidentally place important graphics or text in this location. And just know that everything that you could do with the old book cover creator can still be done with this one. You still have the shapes menu to help you customize your book covers. You can still upload your images and place them onto your artboard. And you still have the ability to color adjust them. And just like in the old designer, if you want to duplicate your images into patterns, you can still do that too. Now, a couple of really great new features that BookBolt has added to the new studio are guidelines and, more importantly, the snap feature. That's right, you can now center your graphics not only to the entire book cover, but to both the front and back cover individually. This feature alone will speed up your book creating process immensely. On a side note, this book cover label is just one of the 10 labels that come with my low-content book bundle. The bundle also includes 32 KDP-ready lined paper interior templates, 16 of which are wide-ruled and the other 16 are college-ruled. The trim sizes included in this bundle are 6x9, 8x10, 8.5x11, and the 8.5x11 trim sizes come both with and without margins. Each template trim size comes in 4 page quantities, 80, 100, 120, and 150 pages. And you can pick up this bundle in my Gumroad store for just $3. I have a link to it in the description of this video. Okay, moving on. You'll also find the original text tool in the new BookBolt Studio, only now it's far more intuitive. The way it's laid out now is the way you would find it in most graphic design software programs. And they still give you a ton of free fonts to use, and if there's certain ones that you like, you can always click on the little heart icon to save them to your favorites tab. And if you have your own fonts that you want to use, you can upload them here. As far as the rest of the tools go, you still have the ability to use masks, apply a distressing effect to your graphics, as well as a new feature that allows you to add in grids to your project. I have to say though, one of the things that I really like about the new BookBolt Studio is that the layer menu is now always showing in the right-hand column. So you don't have to go looking for it anymore, like you did in the old designer. That just makes the workflow so much more efficient. Now, where the really big improvements happen is when it comes to laying out your book's interior. No longer do you have to create a new document for your book interior. You can do it all right here in the same place as your cover. Now, before I jump into exactly what you can do in here, let's take a little walk down memory lane. Remember in the old Book Bolt Designer when you wanted to create an entire book of original one-off custom pages? But you could only create 2 pages at a time, and you would have to render them out in quantities of 24 because that was the lowest amount of pages that the setup menu would allow you to choose? So you'd create your first 2 unique pages of your 80-page book, and then you'd export them out as a PDF. And because you didn't want 24 of those pages, you only wanted the 2, you'd have to open up that PDF document and then save just the 2 pages you wanted out as either a PDF, PNG, or JPEG. Then you'd have to go back into the Book Bolt Designer and click on the Interior Pro menu. From there, you would have to upload your 2 single PDF, PNG, or JPEGs to the Upload section. And then you'd have to go back into the Interior section and select the page that you wanted your unique custom pages to appear on. And then once you had finished all of that, all you'd have to do was repeat all of those steps 39 more times to fill up your entire 80-page book interior. And what a pain in the ass that was. But the good news is, you don't have to do that anymore. In the new Book Bolt Studio, when you're importing a page template into your book's interior, you now have the option to either select all of the odd pages, all of the even pages, all of the pages, or just whichever individual page you want your content to be on. So you can mix and match any of these page templates to get the exact book interior you're looking for. And the cool thing is, even once you've placed your page template into your interior document, you can still continue customizing it. So every single page can now have its own unique look. Your only limitations now are what graphics you have available to you from either inside or outside of Book Bolt and your own imagination. But wait, there's more. Now, for those of you who had purchased the Pro subscription and had access to the Puzzle Whiz, you can now create your custom puzzle pages right here in the Book Bolt Studio. And because I didn't show you how to use the Puzzle Whiz in my last video, I'm going to create one custom page for a puzzle book, and then I'm going to create the cover for that puzzle book, just so you can see exactly what the new Book Bolt Studio is capable of. So let's start out by creating a new project from scratch. Okay, so when you're starting a new project, as I said earlier in the video, you now have the option to work on either the cover or the interior of your book, or you can work on both of them at the same time. For this example, I'm going to choose both, and I'm going to make it a paperback. I'll just name this project Puzzle Book. I'll keep the trim size set to 6x9, the interior and paper type at black and white on white paper, and I'm going to choose no bleed. As for the page count, I'm going to set that to 74. My book will have 60 puzzles, one on each page for a total of 60 pages. 10 pages of puzzle solutions, one cover page at the beginning of the book, as well as a copyright page on the back side of that cover page. I'll also be adding in 2 extra pages just in case I want to put an Amazon product review page at the back of the book. So as you can see in the left-hand menu, I have my cover as well as all of my interior pages. This new feature of having access to all of my book pages in one section is much closer to the way Adobe InDesign is laid out, and that's a huge improvement. Okay, so I'm going to create the book cover last because I want to use some of the interior content on my cover. So I need to create the interior pages first. As I said just a minute ago, the first page of my book will be the cover page, or it could be a This Book Belongs To page. It's your choice. And my second page is going to be the copyright page where I list all of my contact info like author page URL, as well as the copyright info and the ISBN number of the book. So for that reason, I'm just going to skip these first 2 pages and I'm going to start on page 3. Now you have a few options as to which type of puzzle books you can create in the new Book Bolt Studio. And all you have to do to add a puzzle to one of the pages is just click on the page templates icon in the left-hand toolbar and then find the type of puzzle that you want to create. Now keep in mind, there are a lot of templates in here to choose from, but the puzzle templates are only available to the users who have purchased a Pro subscription. For this example, I'm just going to create a word search puzzle that has a Valentine's Day theme to it. And then the book cover that I create later in the video will be for that type of book. So all you have to do is click on the puzzle template that you want to create and then select the page that you want the puzzle to go on. Then just hit the next button. The next menu that opens up is the option menu, and in here you're going to have a few more choices. Up at the top you have the option to add margins. Now just note that these settings are not referring to the margins that come in from the edge of your page. Those margins have already been preset by Book Bolt. This is referring to setting up spacing inside of those margins. You'll see what I mean once I finish setting it up. So for now, I'm just going to set each one of these margins to 0.25. I'm also going to leave the font style as well as the font size right where they are. Just know that you have a few options to choose from in here. But I am going to change the font color to black, and I'm going to change the stroke color to black as well. Now, since this is a word search puzzle, to create it, you have to give BookBolt the words that you want to appear in your puzzle. The easiest way to do this is just download this example file, rename it to whatever your project name is, and then open up the Excel document and just replace all of the words from the example file with all of the words that you want in your puzzle book. I'm creating a Valentine's Day themed puzzle book, so I'll use words that relate to Valentine's Day, like so. Now I want you to keep something in mind. When I was choosing the page I wanted to put my puzzle on, I only chose one page just for this example. Now I'm planning on having 16 words in each puzzle, so all I really need to have in this Excel document are 16 words. But if you're creating an entire puzzle book, you don't have to create all of these puzzles one at a time. You can create them in batches if you want. All you have to do is select all of the pages that you want puzzles to appear on. So when it comes to setting up this document, just make sure that you have enough words in here to cover all of your puzzles. So if you wanted to create a batch of 10 puzzles and each puzzle is going to have 16 words in it, you would just need to make sure that there were 160 words in this document. 16 words times 10 puzzles. So you would just put in 16 words, leave a blank space, and then add in another 16 words, leave a blank space, and so on until you had all 160 words in here. And whether you're creating puzzles one at a time or in batches of 10, you're always going to need to have a new CSV file with different words in it for every new puzzle or batch of puzzles that you create. Alright, back to the setup. So once I've uploaded my CSV file with my words in it, the next thing I have to choose is how many words I want in each puzzle. In this case, I want 16. I'm not going to be using cells because using them makes the puzzle solutions impossible to read. So don't worry about the cell color. The next thing you're going to want to do is turn on this Add Solutions option because you definitely want those. Leave the Add Cells turned off, and I don't recommend using this Random Words option either. This feature is just in case you don't have enough words in your CSV file. The problem with this is, since I'm creating puzzles that have to do with love, relationships, and significant others, I may have a puzzle titled Cute Names I Call My Significant Other. If the random word generator kicks in and decides to use the word dishwasher, that's not going to go over too well with my significant other. It's funny, but it's not a good idea. So I'm going to leave that turned off, and I'm just going to make sure that I have enough words in my document to cover all of my puzzles. Okay, so once you have everything selected, just click the Submit button. And as you can see, we now have a word search puzzle. Now this is important. The puzzle generator is going to create your puzzle on one page and your puzzle solution on its own page. So if you're creating just one puzzle at a time, the generator will create your puzzle on the page that you've selected and the solution on the page that follows it. But if you're creating 10 puzzles at once, the generator will create your 10 puzzles on the 10 pages that you selected and then the puzzle solutions on the 10 pages that follow. So you need to make sure that when creating puzzles in batches that you have enough empty pages to accommodate the solutions. Now you're not going to just leave each solution on its own page. Eventually you'll group 6 of them to a page. So in a book with 60 puzzles, you'll only have 10 solution pages. But you're going to have to do the regrouping of the solutions after they're generated. So just keep that in mind. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. Now this page isn't finished. I still need to pretty it up a bit before it's ready for print. Now when I was mentioning the margins earlier, I meant these margins here, not the outside ones that are preset by BookBolt. So if you leave your margin set to 0, then your text will run right up to these preset margins. So the first thing that I'm going to do to this puzzle is break it apart so that I can start editing it. To do that, all you have to do is select the puzzle, right-click on it, and choose Edit Contents. That will ungroup the puzzle. Now because each of these letters is now individual, just so that you don't accidentally move something, the very next thing you should do is select all of the individual letters and group them together. You can do that by dragging your cursor over all of them, and once selected, right-click on them and choose Group Objects. So the first thing that I'm going to do to decorate this puzzle page a bit is add a border around the puzzle. You can do that by going up to your Shapes menu and selecting the square. Then just change the fill color to transparent and the stroke color to black. and then set the border width to about 10 pixels. Now just grab the border and drag it out so that there's an equal spacing between the border and all of the text. Don't worry about where it's sitting on the page. We're going to be playing with that later on. Now that the border is created, select both the border and the puzzle text and group them together, and then rename the layer to puzzle. Okay, so the second thing that you're going to want to do is lay out these words in a way that's a little more visually appealing. So all I'm going to do is divide them into 4 columns of 4 words each. You're probably going to have to finesse them a little bit, so just play around with them until you get the look that you want. You may have to move some of the words around. Now, I'll add in the puzzle name above the words. I'll do that by going up to my text menu in the left-hand toolbar and clicking on the heading tab. For this example, I'm just going to call it Puzzle 1, but you can call it whatever you want. And then I'll resize it and position it. After that, I think I'll add in the page number at the bottom of the page as well. Now, just to give this page a little more visual appeal, I'm going to add in a few graphical elements from the Shapes menu. This shape here will work nicely behind my puzzle title. I'll just change the fill color to a light gray, position it over my heading text, and then move it below my heading in the layer menu. It's always a good idea to group things that need to stay together if they're being moved later on. So when I start shifting things around on my page later on, I'm going to want the title and the graphic in behind it to move together, so I'm going to group them. And then I'll rename the layer to Title. Try to keep your layers menu in the same order that all of these objects appear on your page. It'll just make things a lot less confusing when you start shifting them around. Okay, because this is a Valentine's themed book, I'm going to add in some hearts. Again, I'm just going to use what's in the Images menu, but keep in mind that you can always upload your own clip art from outside of BookBolt if you want to. On a side note, if you do bring in clip art from outside of BookBolt and you want to change the color of it, that's what this outline image button is for. Just select your clip art and then click this icon. Once it's finished rendering, reselect your clip art and then use the color selector to change the color to whatever color you desire. I'm going to keep all of the colors of the graphics that I bring onto my interior page the same gray color, just to keep things consistent. I think I'm just going to add a little stroke line here right beside this heart shape. And then I'm just going to group these 2 objects together. Now I'm just going to duplicate it and flip it over in reverse. I'm going to line them up, separate them a bit, and then group them together and snap them to the center of the page. This new snap tool really makes designing in BookBolt a hell of a lot easier. I'm just going to leave the page number and the decorations separate for now. It'll just make altering them later on a little bit easier. But I am going to rename them both in the Layers menu. Okay, so now I'm just going to shift everything a little bit lower down the page. Now that I look at it, I think I'm going to recreate the graphic element at the bottom of the page on the top of the page as well. So I'm just going to use the same heart graphic as well as the same stroke graphic. And I'm going to change them to light gray, resize them, and position them. And once again, I'll just play around with the spacing until everything looks good. Now, the cool thing about using these types of graphics is that once you're satisfied with the way the page looks, you can just copy the decorations, the title, as well as the page number, and just paste them onto all of your pages, and then edit them separately. So this is an example of what your finished puzzle page could look like. Now, if you click on the very next page, that's where your puzzle solution will appear. So what you're going to want to do with this is right-click on it and choose Edit Contents. Then delete the words at the bottom and place a border around the puzzle solution just like you did on your puzzle page. Now is also the time where you could put the title of the puzzle right below it, but keep it fairly small. And then group everything together. Now before you copy anything from one page to another, you always have to save out the page that you're copying from. So now select your solution, copy it, and then go down to the start of your solutions pages, which in this book would be page 61, and paste it. Then resize it so that it takes up about 1/6 of the page. What you're basically going to end up doing is placing 6 solutions on each solution page, like so. Now obviously you're not going to just copy the same solution 6 times over. You'd put 6 different solutions, but I think you pretty much get the idea of what I'm doing here. Then just save the page. Now just know that you don't have to limit your book to 1 puzzle per page. As long as you don't try and create too many puzzles at once, you can actually lay your puzzles out 2 per page. What you're going to want to do here is create at least 2 puzzles at one time. So when you're setting up in the puzzle generator, just choose 2 pages instead of 1. Then in your CSV document, make sure that you have at least 32 words in it, 16 words per puzzle times 2 puzzles. And then just do everything else the same. Now for the sake of time, I'm not going to create 2 more puzzles. Instead, I'm just going to copy and paste some of the existing elements of my finished page so that you can see what a 2 puzzle page might look like. So instead of having all of this on the page, I'm just going to copy the puzzle, the title without the graphics in behind it, the words, and the top decorations. I'll bring them over one by one and then resize them so that they only take up about half the page. Now I'll put the title to the left of the puzzle as well as the words. And I'll use part of the top decoration to divide up my page. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to duplicate all of the contents of the first puzzle and drag it down to the bottom of the page. Just pretend that this is a different puzzle. I think you get the idea. Doubling the number of puzzles makes your book that much more valuable to customers. Now keep in mind that if you do decide to go this route, that you now have 60 pages of puzzles, each with 2 puzzles on them, equaling 120 puzzles. And as a result of the increase in puzzles, you're now going to need 120 puzzle solutions. At 6 solutions per page, that works out to 20 pages of solutions. So what you've done is added another 10 pages to your 74-page book, making your new book 84 pages instead of 74. Just make sure that you account for this when setting up your book so that the spine of your book's cover is the proper width. And speaking of cover, it's time to create one. I'm just going to create this cover as if the book has 120 puzzles in it, simply because 120 puzzles looks way better than saying 60 puzzles. So at 16 words per puzzle, that would mean that our word search book had 1920 words in it. I'll use those stats for the cover as I create it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add in a background image. I downloaded this image from freeimages.com. Most of the images on this site are listed as Creative Commons, which means that you are free to use them in your commercial projects. I'll put a link to this site in the description of this video. I'm just going to resize it and try to fill up as much of my cover as I can with the image. I'm also going to rename the layer to background. Now it's not exactly the color that I want it to be, so I'm going to play around with the hue in the adjustments menu to try to make things a little more purplish. Now just so that I don't accidentally grab and move the background image, I'm going to lock this layer. I'm also going to tie in a few more of those heart shapes that I used in the interior of the book. I'll just resize them and place them randomly around the cover. I think I'm going to vary the colors of each of them as well, but I'm going to stick to my color palette of purples and pinks. Now it's always a good idea when designing your cover to have one bold accent color on your page. And since this is a Valentine's themed book, I'm going to use red as my accent color. And the first place that I'm going to use it is in a big old massive heart right on the front cover. Okay, just so I know which is which, I'm going to rename all of these heart layers. Now the next thing I want to do is bring a copy of my unfinished puzzle onto the front of my cover. A little tip, always save out whatever page you're currently working on before you leave it. If you don't, you'll lose any of the recent changes that you've made to it since you last saved it. So I'm just going to go back to my puzzle page and copy the puzzle, and then come back to my cover page and paste it. Now I'll just resize it and snap it to where I want it to be on the front cover. Don't forget to turn your snap on while you're laying out your cover. Now obviously I can't leave this like this. So what I'm going to do is place a white square with a black stroke in behind it so that the text pops out and is clearly legible. Now it's a good idea to lock all of the layers that you're not currently working on, just to make sure that you don't accidentally move something. Another little tip, if you want to zoom in and out, you can just use your scroll wheel on your mouse. And if you want to be able to move your artboard around, just hold down your spacebar on your keyboard and then press down on either your left mouse key or the scroll wheel on your mouse. I'll just grab a square from my shapes menu. I'm going to make the stroke around my square about 5 pixels larger than the border around my puzzle, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Once I have everything lined up the way I want it, I'm going to group the puzzle and my background square just so I don't accidentally move them later on. I'm also going to rename the layer to puzzle. Now just to give this puzzle a more finished look, I'm going to circle a few of the words that are in the puzzle. To do this, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool in my shapes menu. I'm going to set the fill color to transparent and the stroke to a shade of purple. Remember, always try to tie in your overall color palette whenever you can. Now if I left the rectangle corner squared off, it would look kind of dumb. So I'm going to change the border radius to 0.15, just so that the ends of my rectangle have a more rounded look to them. Now I'm just going to duplicate the rectangle and place it around a few other words. Once I have all of the words that I want circled, I'm just going to group the puzzle and the circles together and then rename and lock the new puzzle layer. Now I'm obviously going to have to put text on this cover at some point, so the next thing I'm going to do is start creating some spaces for my text. And the first spot will be on the back cover. I'm just going to place a vertical banner to act as a backdrop for my text. For this, I'm going to use 2 rectangles with fill and stroke layered on top of one another. My first rectangle will have a red fill color with a white stroke of about 25 pixels. Then I'm going to duplicate this rectangle, line it up so that it's centered, change the stroke color to black and the stroke width to around 70 pixels. Then I'm just going to go over to the layer menu and drop the second rectangle behind the first one. Once I have them all lined up properly, I'm going to move them to the bottom of my layer menu, right above my background image, and then lock them. While I'm here, I'm just going to reposition some of my hearts on the page as well. Okay, so now that the back cover is taken care of, it's time to add in 2 additional spots for text on the front cover. The first spot will be right below the puzzle. I'm basically going to repeat what I just did on the back cover, only this time the rectangle will be horizontal and have rounded corners on it. Once I get it positioned to where I want it, I'm just going to rename the layer to front banner and then lock it. I'm not going to spend too much time sizing it because I'll probably have to resize it once I put text on top of it. Okay, so the final area where I'm going to want to have text is going to be in this top right hand corner of the front cover. Here I'm just going to use a small banner on a 45-degree angle as a backdrop. This shape here should do fine. And as for the color, I'll just pick a shade from my purple color palette. Once I've resized and positioned it to where I want it, I'll rename the layer to top banner and then lock it out. Okay, so I think that's about all I'm going to need for graphics on my cover. All I have to do now is put in some text. Let's start with the back cover. I'll start by putting in a heading that states how many words are searchable in this book. So that would be 1920 if I were creating 120 puzzles at 16 words each. As for the font, I'm just going to use Open Sans for this demonstration. Next, I'll throw in a little blurb about the contents of the book, as well as a call to action to visit my author page on Amazon. If you're not sure what I'm referring to, then watch my video on how to promote your low-content books. You can find it in my Self-Publishing 101 playlist, which I'll put a link to at the end of this video. Okay, so once those 2 are set up, I'll just lock out both layers. Next, I'm going to put some text in the top right-hand corner that says something like 100 plus puzzles. Again, I'm just going to use the heading text with a white font color. I'll play around with the size and the character spacing until it looks the way I want it to look. Once that's done, I'll lock that layer out as well. Now I'll add some text at the bottom of the page. I'll put something like Word Search Book. Again, I'll play around with the text size and spacing, and if I need to, I'll reduce the width of the banner behind it. Once I have the text done, I'll lock the layer out. I think I'm going to add one more little line of text just to fill in that empty space here at the bottom of the page. But I'm not going to use a banner this time because the area where I'm placing it is pure white. So using the heading text, I'll put something like "For All Ages." This time I'm going to leave the font color black though, just to try and tie in some of the black that I used in the graphics earlier. And lastly, I'll add in my book title. I'm going to break the title into two different fonts. The title of my book is going to be Valentine's Puzzles. I'll just use the font that I've been using for the rest of my text for the word puzzles. And once again, I'm going to leave it black to balance out the colors on the page. As for the word Valentine's, I'm going to bring in a script font that I purchased a while back called Rashinda Valentine's. There are plenty of script fonts that you could use in here that are free. I just prefer this one. I'm going to set the font color to white and I'm going to put it on a slight angle. I'm also going to add in a slight drop shadow just to further tie in the black on the page. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but the contents of the page still needs to be shifted around a bit, so I'm going to do that now. Alright, so as far as placement goes, that looks pretty good. But there's still one thing that's bothering me, and that's the fact that the graphics look a little flat. So to overcome that, I'm going to add some specular highlights to give the hearts more of a shiny three-dimensional look to them. And to do that, I'm just going to use a few white ellipses. Once I finish placing them, I'll group them all together and then rename and lock out the layer. Now if I was actually going to print this book, I would definitely spend a little more time on it. But for this tutorial, that's good enough. I think you all get the idea. To render this project out, just go up to the Project tab in the top menu and choose Download this project. Now normally, if you were using any other software, I would tell you to render it out in CMYK. But in this software, I just use RGB. When you're creating a cover in a software like Adobe Illustrator, you have a ton of color palettes and color adjustment tools available to you to help you get the richest, most vibrant CMYK colors possible. But in this software, if you were to render this project out as CMYK, all you would be doing is converting these RGB colors to CMYK. So you may as well just render it out as RGB and let KDP deal with it when they print it. They will probably be able to get richer colors out of your RGB file than from your converted CMYK file. So that's basically all there is to it. Lay out your book cover, create a cover page, a copyright page, and then fill in all of your pages with puzzles. Toward the end of your book, group all of your puzzle solutions 6 to a page, and then fill up all of your final pages with that. Now on the last page of the book, I like to put something like, if you enjoyed this book, please consider leaving a review for it on Amazon, or something along those lines. It's up to you. Now, if you're someone who's used the old BookBolt designer in the past, it's pretty clear to see that the new upgraded BookBolt Studio blows it out of the water. But if you're someone who doesn't have access to book publishing software and you want to take advantage of BookBolt's incredible Amazon Marketplace research tools, then BookBolt is definitely a great option for anyone looking to get into low-content book publishing. And if you use the link that I've placed in the description section of this video, along with my promo code Babin, you can get 20% off the subscription price. Alright, so hopefully this video highlighted just how much easier it got to create low-content books using BookBolt. Now, if you haven't watched my first BookBolt video where I walk you step by step through the entire process of how to use their research tools, as well as give you a few examples on how to lay out your own low-content books, then be sure and watch that video next. The video is called How to Make $1,000 a Month Selling Low-Content Books Using BookBolt, and I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. And if you're new to my channel or new to self-publishing and you're not quite sure what it's all about, then be sure and check out my playlist, Self-Publishing 101. You'll find full-length tutorials covering topics like how to lay out your books, how to use margins and bleeds, how to promote your books, and how to improve your chances of selling books on Amazon. And you can find a link to that playlist right here. Until next time, take care.